You think Scar was just a villain? Then you've only heard one side of the story. Before Simba, before Mufasa's golden reign, there was a darker truth, buried, forgotten, and feared. This isn't just the tale of a traitor. It's the fall of a hero, a cub betrayed not by fate, but by his own father, King Ahadi. This is the real story of Scar, the lion the Pride Lands tried to erase. But before we go back to the past, we need to know who exactly Scar is. In The Lion King 1, which premiered in 1994, Scar was introduced as the younger brother of Mufasa, who had an evil heart and was out to get the throne for himself. Because he longed for power, he killed his brother Mufasa and planned the assassination of his nephew, Simba, who was next in line to be king. After eliminating those on his path to kingship, he became ruler of the Pride Lands until Simba returned and overthrew him many years later. However, just like history that is written by the victors, much of this story has been skewed to make a villain out of Scar. To know what really happened, it is time to peel the layers back to the childhood of Mufasa and Scar, when the great king and his brother were nothing more than lion cubs. Many Disney films address the narrative of the strained relationship between parents and children. From The Little Mermaid, where King Triton has a hard time holding Ariel to the laws of the sea, to Cinderella, where the protagonist becomes a maid to her wicked stepmother, the theme has been explored and discussed. But in the midst of these, the relationship between Mufasa, Scar, and their father, Ahadi, just might take the icing for the most toxic relationship in cartoon history. This relationship was revealed in a series of books titled 6 New Adventures, where the history of the lions of the past was brought before the readers. Like all great stories, our story begins with a name. When a child is born, he is given a name that covers the parent's dreams and hopes for the child. But when it comes to Scar, his name had nothing to do with hope or parental love. Do you know that Scar's name wasn't even originally Scar? He got the name Scar after he got the scar on his eye. Before then, he was known by a different name, a name that represented how his father saw him. He was called Taka. This name, like a lot of other names and words used in The Lion King, was gotten from the ancient Swahili language of East Africa. In Swahili, Taka means trash or waste. From the time Taka was born, his father, Ahadi, made it a point to remind him how worthless he was in comparison to his brother, Mufasa. Unlike Taka, Mufasa's name was born from expectation and the hopes his father had for him. That's why Mufasa means king. Little did Ahadi know that by calling his son trash, he had already set him on the downward path that would lead to Mufasa's death. And this was only the beginning. If you thought separating them by name was the end of Ahadi's crime, you're in for an even bigger surprise. While growing up, Ahadi didn't bother hiding his preference for Mufasa. Mufasa was big and strong as a young lion, and he carried more of Ahadi's genes. Perhaps this was why Ahadi took Mufasa for more training and groomed him to become the future king. Unlike Mufasa, Scar didn't get much love from his father. In the book, A Tale of Two Brothers, Ahadi makes a promise to Taka and Mufasa. But then, he goes back on his word because he claims that the pressures of being king have taken away his time for family. Taka feels sad and decides to go hunting with Mufasa. But when Taka gets hurt on the hunting mission, Ahadi doesn't feel sorry for him, and he doesn't apologize for failing his promise. Instead, he tells Taka to deal with things like Mufasa. His neglect of his son, together with his downright love for Mufasa, is what drove Taka off the rails. Imagine a young cub seeking his father's love from when he was born. Like all seekers of attention, Scar decided to follow the path of mischief. If he couldn't get his father's love and attention through the right path, he would get it by simply causing so much trouble that his father would be unable to ignore him. The pattern doesn't change. From the book down to the Lion Guard remake in 2019, the story of neglect remains the same. While the reasons differ, there is one line that unites all the theories surrounding Scar's childhood with Mufasa. Mufasa was the loved and favored son, while Scar was the neglected, and forgotten. When you look at Scar through the lens of this little cub, a cub who only wanted the love and approval of his father, then somehow the actions he took begin to make more sense. And while killing Mufasa for the throne may be seen as an extreme, maybe it was his way of showing his father, a great king of the past looking down from the stars, that he was just as worthy and capable of being king as Mufasa was. But this isn't all there is to the story. Many say that Scar was never loved or favored by nature, but in reality, nature did fight for the sake of this neglected little cub, and that's where the story gets darker, because this next piece in the puzzle just might be the reason why the story of Scar is actually true. In Disney, nature is a very important element. Depending on the circumstance, nature has proved to be both a force for good and an angry goddess ready to take her revenge. This delicate balance is best depicted in Moana. When Maui takes the heart of the goddess, nature goes into a rage, and that rage almost destroys the entire world. Nature's rage is what sets Moana on her mission to restore. And though you may have missed it, this also happens in The Lion King. In the first Lion King movie, Scar kills Mufasa, and Simba runs away, leaving the Pride Lands and Pride Rock at the mercy of Scar's tyranny. But while Scar won his victory over his physical enemies, he starts a new battle with a much stronger, more durable enemy, nature. Mother Nature revolts against Scar's rule by causing a drought to take over the land. This continues until Sarabai tells Scar that if all the animals don't leave the Pride Lands, then he has sentenced them all to death. What if I told you that the same thing happened while Ahadi was king? In the story, A Tale of Two Brothers, Scar gets his scar while fighting a group of buffalo. But the source of this fight is not so clear. Everyone believes that it was caused by Boma, the buffalo, claiming all the water in the Pride Lands for himself. But the real reason was that Mother Nature was displeased with the way King Ahadi was treating his second son, Scar. Just like during Scar's reign, Ahadi faces the wrath of nature because nature was displeased with the way he was ruling. Although Boma was being selfish, the real source of the water issue was the drought facing the Pride Lands. Because Ahadi, the Lion King, was maltreating and neglecting his son, Taka, nature decided to take out its anger on the rest of the animals in the Pride Lands. While nature's way of fighting may have been subtle, it was there. The droughts faced during Ahadi's reign reflect the emotional imbalance going on in his pride. This is one thing that holds true in all the stories of the Lion King, that poor leadership and parenting always disrupt the peace and harmony of the Pride Lands. Scar is not just the tyrannical king we saw in The Lion King and the Lion Guard series. More than a lion with an insatiable thirst for power, he represents that cub that never grew above his desire for his father's approval. In many ways, Scar represents what Nuka became, a cub that chased their parents' love to the death. It is only fitting that Scar was more bold and cunning than Nuka. Perhaps in another timeline, in a different world across the galaxies of the multiverse, there would be a world where Scar got the love he deserved. If he did, then maybe his heart wouldn't have gone in search of power to the extreme. Maybe his cunning would have made him the greatest advisor in the Pride Lands. Perhaps his wisdom would have rivaled even the great Rafiki. But we'll never know, because a Lion King named Ahadi never learnt to treat his sons equally.